The Lunaverse, Episode 16, Hero of Oaton, by That Guy Vex. Chapter 3, Oaton. Trixie hadn't noticed morning arrive until light from the rising sun literally caught her right in the eyes as she blinked irritably at the interruption, muttering under her breath, "Oh, for the love of... Luna, you could have at least waited another hour or two. I know it's the season for longer days, but really, it would have killed you to be late on the sunrise for once!" Ignoring the fact that talking to a pony that wasn't there could be construed as a sign for her exhaustion, Trixie resumed concentration on her work. The item floating before her consumed her entire focus, filling her field of vision as she interwove the layers of her magic through the material of the item, adding fine latticework after latticework of arcane thread. Theoretically, she'd done this numerous times, practiced the patterns over and over again until she was certain of their viability and strength. This was, however, her first time putting the theories into practical use. She hadn't been lying to Raindrops when she said she had these all been in the developmental stages. The first three items had been easy enough. Those enchantments had been simple ones in nature, and each earpiece, a small silver clasp meant to clip on the ear, had been easier to enchant than the last. The next item had been more problematic, merely because while she had a little experience with the type of enchantment in question, divination wasn't exactly an opposite school from illusion, like evocation was, but it certainly was a sidestep from what she was used to working with. The enchantment in question wasn't remarkably advanced compared to the things she could do with illusion, but she still needed to practice the formula numerous times to feel comfortable with laying this enchantment upon the item chosen, a pair of thick black glasses. So then, that had left this final item to enchant, which was by far the easiest, because he had done this particular enchantment before. Compared to the others, layering this one was a cakewalk. The problem overall with the items had been much more about the duration she was attempting to achieve, not the effects themselves. Enchantments he was present to maintain were essentially second nature. A long-time enchantment, however, one that would theoretically last for hours, if not days, without her around to keep it maintained, it was a task well outside what she was used to doing, and the toll it was taking on her exceeded what she anticipated. But it was nearly done. Before the sun managed to crawl too much higher into the sky, Trixie wove together the final threads of the spell and tied them off, watching with satisfaction as the enchantment settled into the pendant she had floating before her. It was a plain, diamond-shaped piece of steel no larger than a bit, with a single oval sapphire embedded within. The pendant was attached to a plain series of small box links. A simple enough bauble that few ponies would take a second look at, was just exactly what Trixie wanted when she sought the item out from the local jeweler, Amethyst Star. It was a cheap piece of jewelry, but with the enchantment now on it, Trixie imagined it was worth quite a bit more than what she paid for it. Too bad there were certain laws against selling items with that kind of enchantment she placed on the pendant. Otherwise, Trixie could solve all kinds of financial problems with a little side business. Tucking away the enchanted items in a pair of small saddlebags, the same color as her signature cape and hat, she did one brief check that she had everything she needed, yawning as she did so. Perhaps she could have at least tried to get a quick nap in between enchantments. She was feeling a little lightheaded, and the world was tilting ever so slightly to the left. No, wait, that was her. Trixie caught herself from falling over and shook her head, clearing the light fuzzy feeling. "Oh, just sleep on the train," she told herself as she went to the shower and got herself clean for the day. Cheerilee was a morning pony, as much by nature as necessity of her job as Ponyville's only practicing schoolteacher. So she was up, packed, and almost as eager to get going as the filly by her side by the time they left her home under the light of sunrise.
"Bye-bye, guys,"
Bushel said, leading back into the house.
"I had a lot of fun meeting all of you, especially you, Monty."
"Oh, you liked Monty the most?" Cheerilee said with a knowing smile.
"Mm-hmm. He gets all big and puffy, and it's awesome with all those spikes. Why does he do that and the others don't?"
"It's a defense mechanism his species has developed to avoid getting eaten by bigger fish," Cheerilee explained, instantly dropping into instructor mode. "He's called a porcupine fish, from the Diodonte family."
"That's a weird name,"
Bushel said, face screwing up in confusion. Cheerilee chuckled. "Isn't it? Monty is a much better name, I thought."
feel kind of bad for Monty 2, 3, and 4. You should think of special names for them.
Well, that's kind of... Cheerilee trailed off. She wasn't sure how to break it to Bushel that she'd run out of new names a while ago, and had to move on to the alphanumeric system in order to keep things straight with her fish.
And why is there only one goldfish named Gil 29? That's weird. What about the other gills?
Oh, that's a long, boring story. You don't want to hear about that, dear, Cheerilee said, perhaps a tad on the quick side, and waving a dismissive hoof. It had certainly been an interesting time, having Bushel in her home. Cheerilee was used to dealing with a large number of energetic foals. It sort of came as part of her job description, but there was something different about having one in her own house. Cheerilee wasn't really used to having any pony over to her home, at least not for more than a brief visit. So for a little while, at first, she hadn't been sure what to do with Bushel, besides answering the filly's enthusiastic barrage of Trixie-related questions. Bushel had wanted to know everything about the great and powerful Trixie. What she liked to eat, what she liked to do for fun, what kind of adventures she had besides the one in Oaton. The thing of it was, Cheerilee wasn't sure how to answer a lot of those questions. Trixie was her friend, no doubting that. But Cheerilee had to admit she hadn't spent a lot of time with the Azure and Unicorn since Trixie had arrived at Ponyville. At least, not as much as the other elements had, it seemed. Cheerilee knew a lot of that had to do with her job, and how busy it kept her, making it difficult to find time for just being social and getting out there, as it were. It wasn't like Cheerilee didn't enjoy being around other ponies, as she didn't think she felt guilty about not being able to spend a lot of time with her friends, or being there to help when some misadventure reared its head, which had happened quite a lot since Trixie came to town. That said, she made the snap decision last night that she was going to help Trixie out with the situation. It just felt like the right thing to do. She wasn't exactly sure how she was going to help, but she was certain she'd find a way. She actually already started the previous night with Bushel. Cheerilee had managed to work in some questions of her own, for the filly admitted the either awkwardly hiding how little she really knew about Trixie's personal habits, or telling a highly edited version of the events of the Longest Night Festival. The only adventure Cheerilee knew Trixie had that was legit. I'll let Trixie know what I found out on the train, Cheerilee thought, as she and Bushel came upon Trixie's home. There wasn't a lot to what she learned from Bushel, but Cheerilee knew every little detail might prove useful. She saw there was light on inside Trixie's house. Cheerilee figured the unicorn had to be up, so when she knocked, it didn't get a response for after a few minutes. Cheerilee tapped a hoof to her chin and tried knocking again.
Something wrong?
Bushel asked, with the voice of some pony trying to sound worried and not succeeding. Oh no, I'm sure nothing's wrong. Probably just wrapped up in her preparations. You know how heroes are, dear. Extremely focused, Cheerilee said, going over to peer through one of the windows. She didn't see Trixie inside the living room, though a pair of saddlebags were clear to be seen sitting by the couch, with Trixie's wizard hat and cape. Then Cheerilee heard the sound of a shower running and nodded her head. Oh, so that explained that. Hey, Cheerilee, what's up? Said a male voice from behind her, and she startled a bit in surprise, turning around to see a blue unicorn stallion trotting up to the house. Pokey Pierce, assistant to the representative of the Night Court in Ponyville, all-around saint of patience and mental endurance, whose horns shall one day pierce the heavens! Looked between Cheerilee and Bushel with a quizzical raise of his eyebrows. Good morning, Pokey. Aren't you here a little early? Trixie messaged me last night, saying she wanted me here at the crack of dawn to start work, 'cause she was going out somewhere. Offered overtime for covering the weekend for her. But I'll believe that when I see the bits hit my wallet. Message? Spells he's not going to that lets her talk from one spot to the next. Basically, she yells into her desk drawer, and the sound comes out right next to my freaking bed. I never should have set it up, but you know how she can be convincing. Puggy said with an exasperated sigh, which he then shrugged off and asked, So what's with the kid?
I'm Bushel. So good of you. So, do you work for Great and Powerful Trixie? That's so cool.
It's cool. Puggy looked to the school teacher for help as the filly bounced up to him, wide-eyed and clearly ready to assault the poor stallion with questions.
Bustles traveled here from her village to ask for Trixie's help with a problem her village is having. You know Trixie, how she's always helping ponies.
Cheerilee grinned at Pokey while giving him a stare that she hoped suggested that he needed to take the hint and play along. No such luck. Trixie helping ponies. The way Pokey said it was as if he were sounding out the words of a foreign language.
Yes,
Cheerilee responded with emphasis.
she does that. She's known,
Pointed at Bushel while the filly wasn't looking,
for her heroic deeds in helping ponies. And as her assistant, you would of course know about that and act accordingly. So, what do you do as her assistant?
Bushel asked.
Do you help her fight bad guys and monsters?
I do her paperwork, mostly, and fetch her drinks, and generally take her. Cheerilee had come up and wrapped a hoof around Pokey's neck in a way that probably looked like a hug to the casual observer, but was actually rather closer to a choke. Hopefully, Bushel wouldn't notice the difference. While Pokey was busy trying to figure out how to move air through a now significantly constructed windpipe, Cheerilee smiled at Bushel in a completely natural manner.
Oh, Pokey, such a kidder. She's actually quite embarrassed about helping such an important pony like Trixie, so he likes to joke a lot about it. Anyway, Bushel, why don't you go listen at the door? It tells me it sounds like Trixie is still showering.
Well, Bushel gave them a weird look. She obeyed and went over to the door. In the meantime, Cheerilee let Pokey go enough so the air could come, but not quite get away, as she put her face against his and whispered,
Sorry, Pokey, but just play along, okay? For the moment, Trixie's a hero, at least to that filly. And really, what's your language? You're old enough to know better than to swear around a foal.
Gee, thanks, Mom, Pokey said, then frowned. Wait, Trixie's showering?
Well, the shower's running, so it stands to reason,
Cheerilee said, wondering at the concerned look on Pokey's face. Then, shouldn't we be hearing some sort of off-key, annoyingly loud, and inappropriate singing right about now?
Was that a knock on Trixie's singing or my singing?
Pokey asked with a raised eyebrow. Cheerilee hadn't thought about that. She didn't know much about Trixie's habits, but it was kind of hard not to know about her penchant for singing in the shower, as Pokey at least complained about it often, and there had been a few other complaints from the representative's neighbors about noise pollution. I think this is really a knock on my singing, and right now, there's certainly no singing going along.
I suppose we'll have to check inside,
Cheerilee said, coming up to the door.
Miss Bushel still had her ear pressed against. Oh, Miss Cheerilee, I can still hear the shower going. Thank you, dear. Me and Mr. Pierce will take things from here. Just wait here and we'll go fix Trixie, all right? Okay,
Bushel said and stood aside. Cheerilee didn't want to worry her, but if something was wrong, she didn't want to waste any time. She tried the door handle, but found it was locked. Really, Trixie? Ponyville was about as crime-free as town's got, and Trixie still kept her door locked? Cheerilee took her head and glanced at the window.
Maybe we could get one of those open?
Oh, no need for that, Pokey said as he tried, or more like strutted up to the door, his horn practically catching the morning sunlight in a gleaming glint. I got this. Cheerilee cocked her head to the side as he lowered his head and aimed his horn at the doorknob around the lock.
Pokey, are you sure?
Just who the heck do you think I am? I'm Pokey Pierce! Now, let me show you why I got that name. The blue unicorn flipped his mane out of the way and lowered his head. Tip of his horn aimed squarely for the lock that Pokey now had his eyes fixed on, like a prize fighter sizing up his opponent before the bell rings. His nostrils flared, and Cheerilee wondered if that was its steam she was seeing jetting out, or if her imagination was just getting a tad overworked. There was a tense moment of silence as the schoolteacher Billy watched on as Pokey and Trixie's door locked squared off. Then, with an undulating cry of battle, Pokey shoved his head forward, horn hit locked with a high-pitched squeal of metal. Cheerilee was suitably impressed. Pokey's horn had gone straight through the lock and had bent itself all the way up to his forehead. Property damage and possible legal repercussions aside, it certainly was one way to get into a locked home. Then a minute passed, and Pokey hadn't removed herself from the door. Cheerilee continued to wait patiently, but when it was clear the unicorn stallion wasn't extricating himself from his position, she cleared her throat.
Are you alright, Pokey?
Yep, just fine. Just, really comfortable where I am right now.
You wouldn't happen to be stuck, would you?
There was a small, experimental wiggle of Pokey's head before the unicorn's body sagged.
It's a distinct possibility.
That was so awesome! Bustle said in a small voice. Do it again! Later, dear. But first, I need to get Mr. Pierce out of Trixie's door. Pokey, I apologize in advance if this hurts a little.
Wait, what are you going to do? Oh no. Wait a sec! Cheerilee!
Pokey began as the Earth Pony Mare got behind him, wrapped her hose around his barrel, and braced her hind legs to pull.
A unicorn's horn is real sensitive! It's like, well, a part I can't talk about with a Billy present. If you pull like that!
Oh, I'm sure you'll pop out just fine,
Cheerilee said as she yanked. However, Pokey had apparently done a very good job of piercing Trixie's door, because he hadn't come free from the first tug, or the second, or the third. Pokey was less than enthused with the situation.
Go! For the love of Luna's hot and mortal plot, just stop! Cheerilee, you're gonna tear the thing off!
Pokey has apparently taken cuss words lessons from Little Pip.
Maybe I'm getting the angle wrong. Try wiggling a bit.
No! No wiggling! Just get off me!
I'm certain we can get it out with enough force. You can do it, Mr. Pokey. Don't believe in yourself. Believe in the me that believes in you.
Bustle, you're not helping!
Do I even want to ask? Interrupted a dry female voice. Every pony that didn't have their head shoved in the door looked up to the new voice to see raindrops flying overhead, saddlebags strapped to her back. The Pegasus was looking at the scene with the look of a pony that wanted to ask details, but wasn't sure it'd be worth it.
Trixie's not answering her door. He's taking a shower, but her doors are locked. So Mr. Pokey attacked the door with his head, but now his sword is stuck. So Miss Cheerilee is trying to pull him free, but he's being a big baby. So I wasn't even helping, but even if he doesn't say so.
Bissell got out in one giant rush of a run sentence, only sucking in breath once he was done. Raindrops looked at each of them in turn, then shook her head, sighing. Right. Hold on a sec. Raindrops flew around to the side of the house out of sight. Cheerilee heard Raindrops' voice, and in a few seconds, the Pegasus was flying back, landing next to them, looking vaguely annoyed. Not long after that, Pokey let out a yelp as the door swung open inward, dragging him along with it. Cheerilee letting go, and standing there to stare at a still dripping wet Trixie, who had a towel half wrapped around her. Trixie looked dead tired, her horn glowing with faint violet aura as she held the door open, looking at every pony. Her eyes slowly came to rest on Pokey, who was half laying on the floor and half held up by his horn stuck in her door.
Good morning, Pokey.
Good morning, boss,
he said, waving a hoof.
Why are you in my door? We couldn't hear you singing even though you were taking a shower, and we got worried, and Mr. Pierce decided to open the door?
Cheerilee explained with an apologetic smile. Trixie's deadpan expression matched her tone.
I was tired of all the complaints, so I decided to use a sound dampening spell this morning. See how well it worked, and if it could get the neighbors off my back. You could have just done what Raindrops did and knock on the shower window. I could hear stuff right outside the field. Yes, well, I suppose we all just got a little caught up in the moment, said Cheerilee, but only because we were worried about you.
You all right? Asked Raindrops, looking Trixie over. You did get some sleep, didn't you?
I'm fine.
Trixie said, starting to yawn. But then seeing Bushel there, she suppressed it and smiled instead.
More than fine. If you don't mind waiting a minute, I'll finish drying off and get my things.
Trixie turned and went back inside, closing the door behind her, with Pokey still inside it.
Boss, watch it! I'm seriously starting to feel my horn listening here!
Oh, don't exaggerate.
Cheerilee said, with a comforting pat on Pokey's head. I'm sure your horn is fine. Biologically speaking, the horn of a unicorn is one of the stoutest pieces of their anatomy. It's not like a tooth that can just be knocked out. It's practically a part of your skull. It's far more likely to break in half than come loose.
Thank you, Cheerilee. That makes me feel so much better.
Pokey's Pierce was skinny dipping in the ocean of sarcasm.
You're very welcome,
Cheerilee said with a smile, oblivious to the unicorn's tone.
We're not even on the train yet, and this day's just starting off weird,
Raindrops muttered. A minute later, the door swung open once again, dragging a groaning Pokey along with it, and Trixie, freshly troweled off and striking a fairly impressive figure with a violet spark deckled in wizard hat and cape. Despite her earlier signs of fatigue, the Azure Unicorn mare had an alert and determined poise to her. Though the way her eyes flickered towards Bushel, suggested the filly's presence had a lot to do with this.
Well then, shall we be off? We have a town to save, and a little time to waste, I suspect,
Trixie said in a slightly baritone-pitched hero voice she had come to adopt. Cheerilee might not have been the most observant pony in the world, but she caught the way Raindrops stiffened at Trixie's voice, though the Pegasus didn't say anything. Bushel's eyes were locked onto Trixie, with clear reverence and excitement.
Yes, let's go! I can't wait to get back home and see the look on everybody's faces when they see who I brought. Pa won't be able to stay mad at me, I'm sure. Not when you save the town again.
Just be ready, Bushel, in case this takes longer than this one day,
said Raindrops, as they all got walking toward the train station, slowly choosing her words.
We not may be able to pull it off this easy, you know.
Oh, come on! This is the great and powerful Trixie we're talking about! She beat up Corona, so how could a stupid lumber guild be hard compared to that?
The filly asked, with innocent confidence. Raindrops looked at Cheerilee, who smiled sheepishly and said,
I may have told her a little bit about what happened on the Longest Night Festival.
Apparently you did tell a little. Beat up Corona?
Raindrops whispered, as she floated now next to Cheerilee, putting her head next to the earth pony, so she could talk quiet enough to Bushel for her not to hear.
I tried to put Trixie in a good light while sticking as close to the truth as I could. I didn't tell her anything like Trixie beating up Corona in a hoof-to-hoof duel, but Bushel's a fault, Raindrops. They tend to fill in gaps with their own vivid imaginings. I at least tried to make it clear that Trixie had the help of the rest of us during that incident, and that it was all of us together with the elements that defeated Corona, not just Trixie herself.
Yeah, I can see that from the way she's glued to Trixie. It seems that to the rest of us as sidekicks,
Raindrops said.
Are you jealous?
Cheerilee asked, raising an eyebrow.
No! I'm not jealous of Trixie getting hero worship. I'm worried, Cheerilee.
Whole different spectrum of emotion. Cheerilee frowned. She knew she sometimes had difficulty reading her fellow ponies. But it still sounded to her like Raindrops was jealous of the attention Bushel was giving Trixie. But she could be wrong. If Raindrops said she was just worried, well, Cheerilee wasn't going to question that. Still, she didn't think the situation was all that bad to warrant such worry. Sure, the problem in Oaton might prove more difficult to fix than what Bushel seemed to think it was going to be. True, Trixie might have been slightly being a purely relative term here, overreacting for Bushel's sake. But Cheerilee had to admit, it was hard to not get into the spirit of things. A small band of ponies embarking on a quest to save a small hamlet from the machinations of greed and avarice felt like the start of a properly heroic folktale to Trixie. Reminded her of that Gates and Golems game she played back at college. Raindrops just needed to lighten up.
Well, try not to worry too much, and let's have fun with this,
Cheerilee said, giving the weather Pegasus a reassuring smile.
I mean, as much fun as can be had in a very serious, how to save a town kind of situation. Just relax. We'll help Trixie help Oaton, and then everything will be fine. You'll see.
Raindrops looked far from convinced, but she did nod in acknowledgement, and the group continued on to the Ponyville train station. Sometime later, they had long since boarded the train and left. Dizzy Dew arrived at the house as part of her regular mail rounds. And Trixie, of course, could still be receiving her mail, and to Dizzy's surmise, much as had been the case during the other times Trixie had to leave town, that Pokey Pierce would be there to take the mail. The first thing Dizzy noticed was that Trixie no longer seemed to have a front door. That was disconcerting. It didn't seem likely, but perhaps robbers had removed the door from its hinges to ransack the representative's home? Tentatively poking her head in, Ditsy was immediately greeted by Pokey Pierce, who was awkwardly dragging himself across the living room towards Trixie's office. Door still attached to his head.
Morning, Ditsy. Mail?
Yes?
Good, good. Just, leave it on the table there. I'll go get to it in a sec.
Okay.
Ditsy carefully set down Trixie's mail on the table in front of the couch, not taking her eyes, well, one of them, the other was doing its thing, off the unicorn stallion in his epic struggle to cross the room.
Do you need help, Pokey?
Huh? Nah, I got this. You have a good one, Miss Dew.
Yeah, you too.
Ditsy said as he slowly backed down the house. Once outside, she stood there a second, then shook her head and turned away. There were times even kindness was too baffled to do more than that. Trixie had a lot on her mind by the time Oaton came into view. Her memory of the hamlet almost matched of what she was seeing, though she hadn't really expected any changes to occur in just a year. The main difference that she noted, even tired as she was that the river ran alongside the thatched houses of the village wasn't completely dry like last time. It certainly wasn't what a proper river ought to be, but there was still a clear flow, albeit the water level was far too low for a riverbed of that size. She filed that away in her interesting mental folder, alongside what Cheerilee had told her in between power naps on the train.
I'd be curious to know why Bushel didn't seem to recognize you, despite being 11, and this whole affair with you and Oaton having a year ago,
the school teacher had explained, while Trixie had been forcing herself to stay awake, and Raindrops kept Bushel busy a few seats down. Staying awake was hard enough under normal conditions, but the comfy tree seat, combined with the rhythmic, soothing motion of the train, was a two-hit combo that was killing what little energy she had.
I suppose that is a little odd.
Honestly, she hadn't even thought about it. Normally, she was pretty good at spotting details like that, but she had been so caught up with Bushel's hero worship that it had been an easy detail to miss.
It certainly was, but there is a simple reason for it,
Cheerilee explained.
She had fallen very ill the past few days before you arrived in Oaton. Some kind of fever that none of the local remedies could fix. Her parents were quite worried about her. Since the poor dear was in a borderline coma, and there wasn't a properly trained doctor in town to look after her. Why not just get a doctor from Bridalsville? It's a larger town and within walking distance. They didn't have any beds to pay for a doctor's visit. Most times, a pony gets stuck in a hamlet as small as Houghton. If there isn't a local healer, then the pony just has to stick it out and hope for the best. She clearly got better, though,
Trixie noted, as she looked ahead where the filly had apparently convinced Raindrops to let her stick her head out the window.
That is actually the most interesting part of this,
Cheerilee pointed a hoof at Trixie.
According to her, it was you that cured her.
Trixie's closed eyes flared open, as she gave the magenta mare next to her an incredulous look.
Wait, what? But healing magic is well outside my area of expertise. I mean, I could learn the spells if I wanted to, of course. I'm studying how to unpetrify ponies, after all. But unless I know exactly what Bushel had been ill with, there is no way I could have studied, mastered, and then properly cast a spell to cure her, especially in one night, while drunk! Well, what she's told me is all second hoof, told to her by her parents. However, she insists that the story goes that before you left, after you dealt with everything else, you found out that there was a sick filly in town and insisted to be shown to her. Apparently, you spent all of 10 seconds looking Bushel over, did some sort of spell with your horn, touching it to her forehead, and said she'd be fine. A day after you left, Bushel recovered completely.
Trixie noted the way Cheerilee's tone softened as she looked toward Bushel.
Far as that filly's concerned, you not only saved her town, you saved her life.
Trixie had been mulling that over in her mind for most of the rest of the train ride, and so Squeak had walked to Oaton after they had gotten off the way station.
Despite Raindrop's clear concerns, it seemed more important than ever to Trixie, now that she put in a good showing for the little filly. Still, what exactly had she done to fix Bushel back then? It just didn't seem possible that while drunk her Lulamoon personality could have somehow instantly diagnosed the disease and pulled a curative spell out of her flank in less than a minute. No, Trixie refused to acknowledge that side of her could possibly be capable of a feat she herself wasn't. There was clearly more to the story than this. When she got a chance to talk with Bushel's parents, she'd press for more details. Cheerilee had made it pretty clear Bushel didn't know any real details of Trixie's actions, and Oaton either, as that had been the other things he had tried asking about. Bushel's illness had kept her from witnessing any events herself, and while she heard the tale from the other Oaton villages, Bushel's recounting of events seemed to vary with each telling. Cheerilee had theorized to Trixie that the chances were the filly had probably heard a few conflicting versions of events. If Trixie, Cheerilee, and Raindrops wanted to find out the truth, they just had to piece it together by talking to the ponies of Oaton themselves. At least the trek was nearly over. The sun was out in full force today, and while summer was still a ways off, this particular day had decided to provide a preview of what was to come by being particularly humid and hot. Trixie was glad for the shade of her hat. The 3 adult ponies, plus 1 filly, were spotted by the villagers well before they got close to the collection of homes, and there was already a small crowd gathering to see who was coming to Oaton by the time Trixie and company passed the threshold of the hamlet. Trixie hadn't been entirely sure what to expect out of these ponies, but it didn't take long for her to get her answer, as about a dozen earth ponies of various hues met her, and the others all promptly began talking at once.
Bushel! You daft girl! Your pa's going to tan your hide after he's done hugging you! Where do you run off to? Well, who are them ponies with you? Wait, is that?
Oh my gosh, 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 it's her. Bushel, you crazy little filly. You actually up and found her. Mia, you've got to come. Your daughter's back and she's brought her back. She's brought Trixie. I thought her name was Lulamoon. It's both, you daft horse. Some ponies got 2 names, like real important ones.
Can't believe you came back, just like you said you would. We're gonna bust out the whiskey. Hey, all of the whiskey tonight.
Who are your friends, Miss Trixie? They also from Canterlot. Don't lie us down, classes, bitch. Of course they are. They're big nobles, or like special bodyguards for Lady Lulamoon. Oh, come on. You still call her lady as if she took you in a hoof wrestling and drinking contest at the same time? Well, yeah. Ain't that what you call noble mayors in the hack?
Not when they down 9 mugs of hard liquor without batting an eyelash, then proceed to break your arm off, potato sack. Then you call 'em goddess.
Before the deluge of dialogue could get any more drowning, a bellowing male voice called through the noise as a familiar burly dark green earth pony stallion with a straw hat on his head, sand-colored mane, waded through the crowd.
All right, that's enough. Every pony back up and give these ponies a space. And where were you, Bushel? You're in an entire rainbow spectrum of trouble, girl!
Bushel, eyes wide with the kind of terror only a kid knows when they royally pissed off their parent, is capable of having, immediately gulped and decided to try to see how easily she could turn herself invisible behind Trixie. Trixie, for her part, looked at the approaching stallion with as much confidence as she could muster, despite thinking of how promising the dirt looked right now for a good lay-down and nap. Damn. Maybe Raindrops was right, and she should have gotten more sleep. Mayor Chief, it's good to see you again, she said, pitching her voice so she's sure every pony gathered could hear her clearly. Don't be too angry with your daughter. She went through much to come to me and inform me of Oaton's peril. She only had the well-being of your village at heart and merely took the initiative to do something about the problems you face. Surely that merits consideration. Trixie's memory of Mayor Chief had been brief, but in it he seemed a gently friendly pony, or at least friendly when not stuck in a shouting match with the ponies who'd been responsible for his village's farmland drying up. So she was surprised at the sharp look Chief gave her, though The expression softened almost instantly. However, the way it did was like the mayor had just thrown on a hasty mask. Trixie was good at picking out masks, and it was clear Sheaf wasn't used to hiding his emotions. So mask or not, his feelings were clear. Unlike the rest of his village, he was not happy to see her.
"I'll keep that in mind, Miss Trixie," he said in an even tone. "I won't say I ain't impressed my girl managed to go get you. But a child needs her parents, and I told her it would be too dangerous to leave town."
Yes, the basilisk. She told me about that. We didn't see any sign of such a creature on our way in, Trixie said. That had been a concern on the walk to Oaton, to be sure. Raindrops had flown above them a fair portion of the way to keep an eye out, and Trixie had been ready with a few choice illusion spells to provide distraction in case the beast did rear its head. But the walk had proven peaceful.
"Seems to gone on to ground the past day or so,"
she said, a grave look on his face.
"But ain't no denying it was out there. The Thresher family's condition are testament to that. So a lot of folk here said we ought to try and get a hold of you when the Huffington Lumber Guild set up shop here again. But I didn't want to risk any more of my ponies getting turned to stone. Especially not my daughter!"
Sorry, Pa, Bushel said quietly from behind Trixie. I just thought if I did manage to bring her back with me, you wouldn't be too mad. I'm a real fast runner, you know.
"Hush, girl! Stop pine back there. You might have done right, but you still disobeyed your father. Very least, you're grounded to your room until this all blows over. Now, get on back to the house and see your mother. She's been worried sick about you."
Yes, Pa. Bushel slowly walked out from behind Trixie. Head hung a little. It gave Trixie one last look before heading off towards the largest buildings in town. Trixie had been watching Sheaf's expression carefully, trying to measure his reactions. She wished she'd gone to put on the glasses she intended before all of this, but she had been too busy napping on the train, in between talking with Cheerilee, to even mention the items to her friends or to explain their use. That was going to get bumped higher on her to-do list as soon as she got things sorted out with Sheaf, and a few answers. Yes, well, that aside, I would like to know more details about what exactly is happening here in Oaton. My friends and I will need to know as much as possible if we're going to be able to help.
"And who are your friends exactly?"
asked Sheaf. The name's Raindrops, the Pegasus said in question, looking uncomfortable with all the village ponies looking at her. I'm part of the Weather Patrol team at Ponyville. Cheerilee was happy to chime in. And my name is Cheerilee. I teach at the Ponyville grade school. Weather Patrol team? One of the villagers asked, and another in a whisper that did little to keep it from being heard. What's a weather pony doing out, hanging out with Princess Luna's right hoof mare? Don't ask dumb questions! This obviously doesn't occur. She's probably a shadow bolt or something like that, just pretending to be a weather pony. It's a secret identity. Are you the school teacher? I'm going to guess royal guard. Just look at those eyes. Those are the eyes of a mare that knows how to kill you 5 different ways before your body hits the ground. I'm not seeing it. Tilt your head a little bit. Get the light to catch your eye just the right way. Ooh, yeah. Now I'm seeing it.
"Spit sign, potato sack, we don't need to run on commentary,"
said Mayor Schiff dryly, and the two stallions in question both quieted down, looking embarrassed. Raindrops seemed to be suppressing a moan, shaking her head. A few more whispers about the Shadow Bolt and Royal Guard floated about the town. But Cheerilee didn't seem to mind. It was looking like she was hiding an amused grin behind her hoof. Raindrops came up next to Trixie and whispered, If you're going to start saying the record straight right now would be a great time to start. Just tell them who we really are and why we're here so we can get to the actual business of helping them out. Yes. I know. Trust me, Raindrops. I have this well under control. Trixie whispered back as she then turned to the ponies of Oaton, cleared her throat loud enough to get all the attention, which wasn't hard since most of it was rivered down her and her friends anyway. Trixie smiled. She couldn't help it. Whether she was on the actual stage or not, all eyes were fixed on her, and this was the time to perform. It was clear from the looks on their faces
These villagers thought of the world of her, and by extension, they thought the same of the ponies by her side. It was time to put on a good showing.
Just a touch of dramatic license, she thought. No need to overdo it. Good pony folk of Oaton! My friends are as they say, a humble weather patrol pony and school teacher. But fear not, for each of them is a mare worth 10 of any Shadowbolt or mere royal guard. They are a part of my personal entourage as fellow bearers of the elements of harmony. What are the elements of harmony, you might ask? Why, the very primal forces of creation that brought the dreaded Corona to her knees in utter defeat. Primal forces that have chosen myself and my intrepid companions as their living vessels. Yes, the very embodiments of honesty and laughter have come alongside me to restore peace and prosperity to your humble village. Now, what in awe as I, the great and powerful Trixie, bearer of the element of magic itself, shall use all of my not inconsiderable power and intellect to banish the troubles that face this community.
She reared up on her hind legs, and forelegs poised out dramatically before her, as he resisted the urge to throw out a few illusionary bursts of magical light, and smoke to add some pizzazz to the speech. For something ad-lib on the fly, she thought it sounded appropriately impressive and heroic, and she spoke it loudly and clearly, hoping that Bushel, even indoors, might have been able to hear her. She may have added a slight sound-amplifying spell to get her voice pitched right. On top of that, nothing she said was in any way a lie. A little exaggerated, perhaps, but what performance was it? Surely Raindrops would be satisfied with this. Raindrops' hoof casually wrapped around Trixie, not strongly or anything, just sort of there in almost a hugging manner, as he gave the crowd an extremely forced smile that involved more grinding teeth than actual smiling.
Trixie, can I talk for you a second? Over there, behind the house, where no pony can see or hear us?
Sure, Trixie said, then addressed the crowd. If you would all be as patient as to wait a moment while my stalwart companion wishes a word with me, we shall return in a moment.
Raindrops didn't even wait for Trixie to finish before she started to drag the show mare away, giving Cheerilee a brief look to say,
Might keep you busy a sec while I chat with our entourage leader here. Sure, no problem,
the schoolteacher replied, while Raindrops half-dragged a worried-looking Trixie behind the nearest house. Cheerilee smiled brightly at the confused Oaton villagers.
So, who here has ever played apples to apples?
Raindrops was keeping her breathing even, as he let go of Trixie, once they were both out of sight of the villagers, and faced the azure unicorn.
Keep it cool. Just talk to her without all the shouting you want to do.
What the hey was that back there?
Okay, not so good at the not shouting. Raindrops took it in another shuddering bath.
What do you mean?
Trixie said, with an indignant toss of her mane, the sight of which only dug a deeper claw of irritation into Raindrops.
I was telling the truth, that's all, with some slight embarrassment.
Would have been so hard to just say, hey, we're just a few concerned ponies here to help. Was the speech about the power of the elements of harmony, which, by the way, we don't actually wield at will, necessary?
Raindrops had gotten control of her voice, not shouting anymore. Despite the distance she had taken to Unicorn, she didn't want to risk any villagers listening in on this, as she gave a few glances about just in case.
It's not about necessity, Raindrops. It's about appearances. Did you see the way they were looking at us? It was obvious that what they wanted, so I decided to give it to them.
Trixie set her shoulders straight.
And then I did it without lying, if you were paying attention.
Raindrops had been paying attention, and Trixie was missing the problem.
Maybe not lying in the literal sense,
Raindrops said, tone steadfast.
But that's not important. What's important is that you were making us out to be more than we are. I'm a weather pony. That's it. A Shadowbolt, if they even exist, would kick my flank. Being the bearer of an element doesn't make us better than any other pony.
I'm aware of that. Believe me, I was keeping things simple in comparison to how I could have gone presenting us. Again, Raindrops, just a little embellishment, but still the truth. As long as we succeed in saving the town, what does it matter if I make us look good while doing it?
Raindrops looked at her friend in the eye, trying to measure, trying to be sure. She knew Trixie could be manipulative. There had been certain promises involving hooves and jaws concerning that matter. And that being said, Raindrops was even willing to cut the unicorn mare a bit of slack, understanding that to a degree, this was just Trixie being Trixie. She was a show mare, and this was a performance to her. And while Raindrops wasn't happy with it, she couldn't fault Trixie for it. Yet. There was always the chance Trixie could take things too far. And that was what Raindrops was most concerned about. Raindrops knew how bad things could get when anger took over, as he was aware of a few things that could be anger than now of ponies who felt betrayed. If Trixie made out to saving the town was a given, and they failed to deliver, slowly Raindrops said, "Just keep the speeches to a minimum. Focus on the job. We still need to find out what's up with this lumber guild."
"I'll try to tone it down a bit,"
Trixie said.
"Just wanted to make a good first impression."
"By the way, do you actually have a plan, or are we just winging this?"
"First things first, we get Mayor Chief alone. Something seemed a bit off about him. I want to get details about the Lumber Guild, obviously. But I'm curious about why the mayor doesn't seem nearly as thrilled about us being here as everybody else is. So,"
Trixie rummaged her saddlebags and pulled something out.
"I need you to wear these."
Raindrops looked at the item Trixie had levitated out and blinked. "Trixie, I don't need glasses."
Trixie grinned. "Oh, for what I have in mind, you do. Trust me."